Welcome to today's episode of the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so we can learn to become who we were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share the podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Annalie Howling. Annalie is a highly qualified performance coach with over 20 years experience working with leaders in business, elite sportspersons, and members of the armed forces, including ex-UK Special Forces. She specializes in transitional support and through her unique approach is able to ensure her clients overcome any self-imposed limitations to achieve their goals and move forward with confidence and a more fulfilling life. Annalie, welcome to the podcast. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have you on the show. For me, this is a full circle moment. A year and a half ago, I was healing from a shoulder surgery and a neck injury. And your content provided context, language, and inspiration for a change in my life. It was a time where I was about to make a massive pivot, one that's brought me here with you today. And this journey as a coach and content creator has been like this for me, where I just keep asking people to show up. I keep asking people to be on the podcast and they say yes. And so I'm very grateful for you for having said yes today. But I'm also grateful because I know this conversation is going to be one that changes people's lives. So Annalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those gorgeous words. I feel very honoured. So my name is Annalie Howling. I'm based in London in the UK, but I travel extensively. I have clients all over the world, particularly in the States, actually. Big clientele over there. I work with veterans of the armed forces. I specialise in trauma work as well as coaching for performance. So it might be a corporate athlete, someone that's a C-suite, the very top of their game there, and through to professional athletes and sports persons, and then individuals that have got something that's a roadblock in their life they maybe can't get past and they want to navigate that. So I love what I do. I find it really, really fulfilling. And a bit like you, I had a pivot at one point in my life. I had a very big corporate job. I've got an MBA in economics. I'm a type A by nature. I had that lifestyle, had a hideous burnout, reassessed all the things. When you had a shoulder surgery to sit in a chair, I had a burnout to just sort of, not be able to function for a while. And it just makes you reassess kind of what you're on this earth for. And I believe, very similarly to you, my purpose is to help other people just shine, and be free of limitations. So that's me.
When we talk about burnout, what was that experience like for you and how did you navigate that?
I think the easiest way of me describing it, I described it recently in this way, like you start off thinking, oh, I must have I must be ill, or I'll go to the doctors, or maybe I've got an intolerance, so I'll get some tests done. Maybe you go through this like raft of all these possible things that it could be.
Yeah, there's clearly a problem with me somewhere.
Really? And I'm sure what I can do is take another thing, like, let's be honest, slap on another Band-Aid. I'll take this supplement, I'll take that painkiller, I'll add on that exercise class, I'll add on, Band-Aid, 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 and you're getting nowhere near the wound. If anything, I'm trying to avoid the wound. It is now like pouring out everywhere. And the reality was I was intolerant, but I was intolerant to my life. So what had to happen was I had to remove the massive, great big, obvious thing that was there, which was my job mainly. That was the main anchor point that took up, all of my time and drained all of my energy into that and was very toxic for me. But that's a huge thing, obviously, much like yourself and people listening, what do you do? And I didn't know what I wanted to do next. It wasn't like there was oh, hey, look, that's killing you, by the way. But if you do this, and here it is, and although you haven't trained in it, educated yourself in it, done it before, anything like that, this is going to make you happy and healthy. You don't know that. So it's a really scary time to just understand that this is harming me and people around me that I care about. And I have to just start taking a step in a direction. And much like yourself saying, if you ask people, they're saying yes, the path will just continue and become clear. So yeah, that was how it started, and this is how it's going.
How do you deal with the imposter syndrome around doing something that you've never done before? You didn't know exactly where you were going, but you knew a shift had to happen. And so you start that process of trying to figure these things out. Maybe you're making a list and writing things down. And what was your process to figure that out for yourself?
So I was very lucky. I had, this is like a long time ago, I'm 42 now. This was just before I turned 30. I had a big burnout. So, and a really, really dear friend of mine had just trained in coaching in the States. And it was quite a wacky woo-woo thing, particularly in the UK then. It was not standard like it is now. You know, Wendy Rhodes
Right.
had the thing and made it great for everyone. It was like, it was a bit weird and out there. And anyway, but she'd done this and I love her dearly. And she said to me, let me do a session with you and we'll do a guided visualization. And I was like, you know, a little bit skeptical, but great. And it was so transformative and it was so impactful. And I can see it as clearly now as I did then in my mind. And so many things from that have become true, including things that I couldn't possibly have known at that time. Obviously, it's my subconscious was speaking to me, but that was the first time I think that, you know, we were talking earlier about like the busyness and, you know, the band-aids and the layering on. I think it was the first time that I was quiet enough to be able to connect to that part of myself. Anyway, it was so impactful on me. And then also add on that I am a type A. So I was like, I have to know everything about coaching. Like, what is this coaching thing? So then I quit my job, but I immediately started my own organization and started doing it as a consultant. So I was doing the same role, but working for myself. So I had some flexibility, a couple of, literally, I think it was 1 day a week I had to myself. And then I started the coach training program and took myself off to the States for a lot of it to be completely immersed in it. Because if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to do it the best.
Right.
That's me. Like I want the medals, I want the badges, I want the certificates. So yeah, I took myself over there to really immerse myself in everything and just kind of just indulged in every modality, the certifications in all of it. So team coaching, systems coaching, family, romantic relationship, you know, in the business organization, one-to-one, everything. And then did all the certifications and the psychometric testing and you name it, which, and I loved. And every time I, you know, I did something else, the path would illuminate the next step for me. And obviously you start meeting this community of people as well, and everyone had quite a similar story, which I'm sure you're finding when you start moving into the, you know, into the industry. You start understanding as well that actually what happened to you is worryingly normal, but you know, people have had an event that has made them pivot, burnout, injury, something else, you know, a life event. And that's sort of really how it began for me. So I'm incredibly grateful that I have that wonderful friend and I had access to that. And thankfully coaching now is so much more kind of day-to-day, accessible, affordable, great quality. And it's not considered to be something unusual. So that was how that began for me.
How can we really dive into that version of ourselves, you know, to dive into the subconscious and maybe start working through our inner critic?
Okay, so I mean, the inner critic, to give a little background on that, which is kind of where I specialize. So the inner critic is a well-meaning friend that's just got it wrong. So they're trying their best. They're like an overbearing aunt, and they're really trying their best to look after you, but you're like, oh my God, this is just not working for me. So anyone that's experienced the inner critic, you call it the saboteur, the judge, imposter syndrome. It's like the devil on your shoulder. It's the negative self-talk when you're, exactly to your point, going to break out of your comfort zone, doing something. So, you know, let's think about an athletic event or something like that. Oh, you can't do that. Do you remember the last time you tried that? It didn't go very well. Look at Aunt Susan. That went terribly for her. The people are much better than you. Think about people starting new businesses. There's no space for you in that market, Jason. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You're a policeman. You're going to be a coach and a content creator. Like I say,
your brain's always looking for that evidence, right?
Yeah.
To prove you that you cannot do this.
Literally. And the reason it's doing this is a physiological thing that dates back to like survival time. So when we understand it, actually, it becomes so much easier to partner with your inner critic. So I've got quite a unique approach. There's a lot of books and messaging out there, and all of it's really important, which is obviously we shouldn't be listening to that voice, like fine. But the sort of the narrative is like crush your critic and like, ugh! And I just think we haven't necessarily got it in the tank. Like I'm knackered and I've got this voice going on at me. Like I don't think I've got it in me to like squash another enemy that lives in my own mind.
Right.
So my approach is slightly different in that we can partner with our inner critic, and I think that we can get a lot further in an easier way. So going back to like times when we needed to live in community for survival, what would happen is, you know, we are literally surviving to our basic needs met. So food, water, shelter, heat, and everyone would have a role, and we would organize ourselves in that community to make sure these roles were met, and we would all fundamentally stay alive, and the big scary saber-toothed tigers wouldn't get us. Like fine. Now, if I failed in one of my roles, if I messed up, did something bad, you know, if I was ostracized from the group, from the community, I would die. There's no question, especially in that sort of time of living. Like, I cannot possibly meet my needs alone. So I need to stay connected to that group. I need to make sure I perform. I need to make sure I'm accepted. And the connection is what's the most important. The rejection is the thing we fear the most. Okay. And social rejection is the number one fear of all humans. It's so well documented, that might be termed as public speaking. So people don't like that because you could be humiliated and rejected. It's how it shows up in these fears. Anyway, fast forward to now, it's perfectly fine for me to live alone with my daughter in a house and run my own life, and I am safe and it's okay. But this physiology, this software, if you like, has not been updated for modern living. So what my lovely little inner critic will try and do, if I'm going to go and put a video out or say something controversial, which I did the other day, which is not out yet, but it's going, oh, you have what Brene Brown calls the vulnerability hangover. And I was like, oh God, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that was too out there. What if? It's trying to keep me in my comfort zone. And the reason it's trying to do that is because that's the only way it knows how to keep me safe in what it knows. So the comfort zone is what we know. That is why it is the comfort zone. It is known to us. We know the good, the bad, and the ugly. But hey, like, we can control it. We've got it's de-risked. We can control the controllables.
Yeah, and you can predict what's going to happen next because you're so used to what's happening in your environment.
Totally. Even if we're miserable as sin, but you can stay in this comfort zone because we know it. So that's great. So that is the inner critic's job. Okay. It's doing its best to make sure that you don't fail, so that you're not rejected, because it still thinks, it still gets triggered thinking, my goodness, if I'm rejected from saying something controversial, I might not get my basic needs met and I might not be able to survive. So it's purely that it hasn't had this like software upgrade like Windows, 2023. It just hasn't had it yet.
Yeah. Or something very important to you is going to be taken away. Especially like on social media, if you have a platform and you say something a little controversial or you say something, that's a little bit out there, you do run that risk. And so that fear it's almost visceral. It goes throughout you, but you have that inner knowing that you have to say it because it's going to help people.
Well, that's interesting because it is visceral. So it is this physiological response. So it does send you into cancel culture, like sits so closely with that fear of social rejection. That is ultimately what it is. Like for me to be socially rejected, which is my number one fear as a human, and cancel culture is a very real possibility of that. So what that's going to do is it's going to trigger a trauma response in me: fight, flight, freeze, flop or fawn. And I'm going to possibly react in one of those ways. I'm going to have the physiological experience of that as well in that moment. And so what all of that might do combined is make me go, let's play it safe. Let's play it safe. Not today. Let's play it safe. I'm not going to do that today. So that's the role the inner critic has. But it's important for people listening to remember, it's a well-meaning friend that's got it wrong. It is trying to do it because it wants to look after you, and that's its only way of knowing how. Like I said, it's like an overbearing parent when you're going to learn how to ride a bike. You've got to fall and scrape your knees. That's how you're going to learn to get your balance. So you can calm your inner critic and get it to become a big cheerleader of yours by reminding it of times that you have done brave things, or even just doesn't need to be like I climbed a mountain,
Right.
I had that conversation with a friend that I was avoiding, or I said no to that invitation and I'm still accepted by this group of people. This is where people pleasing comes from. I can't possibly say no because then I might be rejected or I might not be asked again. It's
right.
all
Everybody's going to hate me, and that's the way it's going to be, and I'm not going to have any friends, and that's my life.
Exactly. And then here I am as a social pariah again. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned flop and fawn, and it's not something that often gets talked about. Can you describe what those are for us?
Yeah, I would love to. This is something I'm speaking about a lot more personally, and there's a lot more on my YouTube channel about it as well. So fight, flight, freeze, I think we're all pretty familiar with now as a trauma responses. Flop is literally passing out. So there's the videos of the grooms at the altar that are quite funny that pass out.
Yeah.
Or I always think of the little impala deer that they bouncing around, they see a threat and they just fall over. So that's a good example of flop. Fawn is very different. The thing I want to say first is, when you're experiencing trauma, when a trauma response is activated, it is faster, much faster, if you think about this, than your cognitive functioning. I'm tapping the front of my brain here, people that can't see who are listening in. So your prefrontal cortex, which lives sort of at the front of your brain, your Broca's area, it's your language just behind that. When you start experiencing trauma, your blood flow gets rerouted to your amygdala, to your limbic system, sort of the people call it the lizard brain or the prehistoric area, because this is where your trauma responses live, because I'm in danger. So right now, I do not need to remember what I need to get from the supermarket or what's in my diary for tomorrow. That's unessential. And frankly, language is unessential. What's essential is get me the F out of this situation right now. So my brain, some blood's gone to here, I'm into this trauma response. I've got 5 responses to pick from. My brain is going to select for me, I haven't consciously done this, the response that's best suited to the situation. So, it might be that I could run from a room because there's it could be a spider or something, right? I'm being a bit facetious, but I could run away from that. It could be that there's something coming, and if I freeze, if I stay still enough for long enough, it might not see me. It could be something that I might pass out just purely from the fear, and it's better that I'm unaware in that moment. My body might select it's better for me to have that. It could be that it's something that I'm going to take on and I feel that I can and I want to attack this and fight it, or whatever it might be. Something might be coming for me and my daughter, and believe me, I'd be in full lioness mode in that moment. Fawn feels very different. So if there was someone that came in here now, and I am here on my own, and they might be much bigger than me or something like that, none of those responses might be suitable. I can't run, they're in the doorway. I can't fight them off, definitely not. By passing out, something really bad might happen to me. And by freezing is not going to help the situation either. So I might start to fawn, which could look like me coming on to them. It could look like me being really friendly to them. It could look like me trying to meet their needs. It could look like a variety of different things. That doesn't mean that I don't feel like I'm in danger. I am, but that's the response that's been selected for me. So, for example, victims of domestic abuse would fawn quite a lot of the time because they're in a physical danger. And again, think about the other trauma responses, they might not be applicable. Potentially there's also children in the house, let's say, and so I would rather that no, I might fall in that situation. I grew up in a household of violence. My father was very violent towards me for a long time. I couldn't get my basic needs met. I couldn't leave. There was nothing I could do in that situation. So I tried to be a good girl. I tried to be better. I tried to be, because I must be bad. So I tried to be much better. I tried to make him happier. I tried to do nice things that would make myself more appealing so that I wouldn't be put through that violence again, so that I wouldn't be in danger. And just to go there, and just a warning, and I'm sure you'll put this up, I'm just about to talk about sexual assault. So the same thing can happen in sexual assault. I work with victims of sexual assault often with the trauma work that I do. And a lot of people come and they have shame, because that's what's left behind from trauma. You have some shame, and the shame is always around. And these are premeditated, cases of sexual assault where there's no question that this is unfortunately what the perpetrator was planning to do from the beginning. And the individuals at some point during the attack may have fawned in some way to just try and either stay alive, speed thing, anything, right? Because again, think about the other responses. Maybe couldn't fight them off, nowhere to run, flopping could be tons worse, and you probably already frozen. So that is something else almost in your survival toolkit that's coming out. But
it ends up being this really elegant solution that just seems to be innate, that it just like it comes up for you, and it's like, boom, here it is. I'm in survival mode. I'm protecting myself, and this is the best way right now that I know how to do that.
Yep. Most people have fawned with a narcissistic boss, because you've got your mortgage to pay and you've got your family to look after, and this person's being toxic and awful, and yet you still find yourself trying to placate them or be nice to them or please them, because if this person sacks me, or if I haven't got my job, or I can't earn my money, or or a colleague, or being again connected in a group or a friendship group even. I mean, there are obviously scales. I'm not saying that these are equal. I just want to give some examples to people where they may have experienced fawning, because in my experience of working with people, there's no more shame that people take away than if they've fawned, because you're like, why did I do that? Why was I so nice to this person that was clearly not being very nice to me? The answer is, a lot of the time you didn't choose it. It was chosen for you, and your system was being, as you say, elegant in selecting a way to keep you alive. And your system can't tell the difference sometimes between a perpetrator and a physical attacker, and something that is threatening your livelihood, like a boss at work, or a mean colleague that might be a very political backstabber. Like it's okay if that happened to you. And the only cure for shame, which is what we get left with, is self-compassion. And that's why I want to talk about this. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about this today, because I honestly think so many people are walking around with deep shame about it. Like, why do I keep going back to that toxic ex? Or, he's so awful to me, or she's so awful to me. And, and it's almost like maybe people that have got some sort of addiction as well, which again, that's listening to Gabor Mate's work. People are finding a solution to the pain that they're in. But if you've had shame about something, it makes you feel like shame has a language of I am. So for years with my father, when he was being very violent towards me, I'm a child. There's this parent of mine is very, very young, same age as my daughter is now, 7. And, there must be something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me, because how could this person, this great person who is don't forget, I was also told all the things that I'd made him do, I'd made him do this, how awful I was. So you just walk around believing I am bad. I am bad. So if I am bad, I might as well do bad things, because I am bad. And I have people sit here with me and we're working through trauma that they say things like, I am disgusting. Yeah. I am hopeless. I am weak. I am a failure. Guys around money, I'm a failure, huge trigger.
I'm never good enough.
Right. Yeah. Huge trigger. So that is what you're left behind with. And I just really want to firstly normalize it for anyone that might be hearing it in this way for the first time. And just also to invite people, if you are feeling like that, like the only cure for shame is self-compassion. It's the only way to get rid of it. And I think for me, part of the journey to self-compassion was like the education, was understanding it, and that I couldn't possibly have done anything differently as a 7-year-old, which I know sounds really rational, but when you're told that you're the problem and you're bad and all these things, there's still a part of you that believes it for a really long time.
Well, as a child, you're sitting there, you don't know how to digest this information. You certainly don't know what to do with it. So you're trying to figure all of these things out with a framework that you don't have. You don't have the language. You don't have anything from your past to draw from. You just know that you're experiencing this thing. It doesn't feel all that great. And I learned a new phrase recently, which I was completely unaware of, and it ends up being carried shame. And it just, I heard that, and it just was such a light bulb moment for me, that it's like you go through this and these things are constantly being projected onto you. And again, you don't know what to do with it. You just know you have this inner feeling, and you don't know where it came from, or maybe you do, but then you end up being as an adult, and you look back on these things and it's like, that was never mine to carry. That was somebody else's burden that they put on me.
That's such a great point. There's a question that I often ask people, or they're talking about something, it's like, is it yours? Is that yours? Because if that is how you believe about yourself, or you think about yourself, that's one way of working. I mean, with coaching, it's one way of working with someone. Or was it something that you were told about yourself, or was it given to you? And the other thing with trauma as well, you can take on shame from something that you've seen happen to someone else. So I have a lot of people that, especially again with in childhood, that maybe have witnessed some violence or perhaps something sexual, and it was way beyond their understanding at that age, and then parents, again, maybe not meaning badly, but they might say, oh, don't worry about that. Forget about that. Forget you saw it. Don't think about it again. Right. But the thing is that the loop is still open, because as you say, you're too young, the language isn't there, you can't rationalize what's happening. And it stays a bit like a record that jumps, like an old vinyl, like you and I both, like vinyl that would jump on the thing. And it doesn't close, the cycle doesn't close. And then you can take on the shame, the humiliation from having witnessed something else and not being able to, if you compartmentalize it or find a home for it.
And then just from what I've seen in real life experience, then we start leaning into maladaptive coping mechanisms later on in life to be able to navigate those old feelings that we experience, that shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Shame makes you feel isolated. Let's think about me. I am bad. So if I am bad, who's going to want to be friends with me? If I am bad, who's going to want to be in a relationship with me? They're going to find it in a critic. They're going to find out later on in life what I'm really all about. Who's going to want to listen to things I've got to say? Who's going to want to, listen to my work, read my book, whatever it might be, because I am bad. Right. So if that's until there's a way, or you find yourself able to do the work of processing that, you go around with that belief. It's like lenses. You're looking out of, forget the rose tinted lenses. It's the shame spectacles that you've got on, and that's how you're viewing the world. And the thing with your lovely little inner critic, this is where it can step in again, because obviously my inner critic doesn't want me to get rejected. So it's like, oh my God, you're bad. Like, what we need to do is you need to be perfect. So, because we can't let anyone here know that you're bad, because that's terrible, and no one will want to know you or be friends with you or ever date you ever again or anything like that. So what we must do is we must be perfect. And so we must people please, we must be polished all the time, we must never mess up, we must be whatever perfection might be in that moment.
Don't embarrass me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I felt that one.
I know. Been there.
That's an old pattern. Yeah, I felt that one.
Yeah. That's such a big one. And the unfortunate thing is this ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of your relationships, because that's how you learned to relate to other people. And so a big part of my platform, we focus on attachment styles, and not from the aspect of trying to figure out the other person, because that's what people want to do. You got the anxious attacher, and they're in this place of, well, I got to figure out the avoidant. I got to know what they're thinking. That way I can predict what's going to happen next in the relationship, and they're not going to leave me and they're going to stay. And it's like, no, we learn about attachment so you can learn about you, who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, how you relate to other people, and how you make other people feel in your presence. And so I'm doing a 21-day self-love challenge currently, and we focus on a lot of these different aspects, the self-compassion, the self-acceptance. From your background and your experience when it comes to attachment styles, how does that relate to our relationships, and can it bleed into other areas of our life?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I think that attachment styles show up in a variety of different ways. I mean, if you think about, if you and I were working at the same company and we had different attachment styles, and we both got the same job, let's just say, working on the same project together, and we get the same email, we're probably going to have a really different response to it. It's a really good way of explaining it. Like we're going to have a very different response. Like, I might be like, oh, well, I'm going to book a holiday and use it now. And like being avoidant or whatever. And like, never mind, I'm going to check out. I've got 3 other jobs I've been talking to anyway. So whatevs, and
no, and it's like that Jennifer Lawrence meme. I used it recently. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, like, literally that. And then yours might be like, oh, what do you think's happened? What happened in the meeting? Like you say, like trying to sort of control and rationalize every outcome.
Yeah, your nervous system just takes right off.
Completely. And I think it would show up in friendship dynamics as well, actually, particularly in, like building new bonds and maybe like new friendships, or even ones that are in transition and flux and change, which they do in life. That is what happens in friendships, especially in sort of, adult friendships when other things are going on in life. So I think the knowledge of attachment styles is really powerful. And the little inner critic can also be deeply involved in that as well, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah. And so for those people that they're on their journey, they're kind of in the beginning of it, and they haven't let go of that idea that I can fix or change the avoidant, what is something that we can give to them today, whether it's a tool or a method or something a different way of thinking about that situation to help guide them through that process?
Well, as someone that's a reformed avoidant, I can tell you now, like there ain't no changing. Like what I mean by that. So I would have had a tendency in the past to be very avoidant, and I am like happily sort of secure. But I would, if I was in a stressful environment with a relationship, or if a relationship felt stressful to me, I would have avoidant tendencies. I'm happy to own that. So, and how that would look is me like flexing my passport and just taking some time out. It's just like, I just need some time out of here. And it's not to disconnect from necessarily the relationship or the individual. That's a way that I find connection back to myself. So it's just a way of regulating my system. So, I would invite also, I think, like taking a stand for yourself. If you find yourself being quite anxious and anxious attachment, the thing that I've learned through so many courses and bodies of work and books and just people and everything is that the most attractive thing and the most important thing is to understand your needs and then have that as your benchmark. And whatever anyone else is doing, you need to take some time in dating, obviously, to kind of get to know if this is value-based going to be a fit and if it could be a relationship. But the more and more you focus on really understanding yourself and your needs and what makes you feel good, it's so attractive. That is like when I speak to my male friends, and they're like, oh my God, when a woman just tells you what she wants, even like at dinner, like, do you know what? I just feel like, please can I have the 2 desserts? I'm just going to have a spoonful of each. Rather than like, oh, I better not order that. What will he think of me? And you get so into this perfectionism, which I used to live with, of just trying to present myself as perfect. But fundamentally what that's doing, and by always trying to intuit the other person's needs, is you're denying connection, because I'm presenting a mask. It's not how I am all the time. I'm presenting you with an unrealistic mask. And quite a toxic knock-on of that can be that you're going to find it really difficult to relax, to feel safe in that person's presence. You're probably going to find it quite difficult to receive in that relationship from that person, and really allow them in, because you're kind of already starting off on, a bit like in survival zone. You're constantly trying to sort of maintain this image. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because I really do understand why people do it. It's because, I did it for years, being a perfectionist, because I was desperately ashamed of myself for being bad. And so I'm trying to present this fantastic image. Now, mine would manifest as avoidant in relationship, but that was also part of it, because I probably didn't feel fully deserving. So I'd need to press the jump up and down on the great big exit button, and just have a few days out of to like kind of find myself again.
I just can't give you what you want.
Yeah.
I can't be who you need me to be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But from a different dialing code, like for a different international dialing code.
Yeah.
It would be true, and it would not be done to be cruel. It would be done because in that moment I was flooded. I'd be so overwhelmed.
Right.
And it would be because I didn't feel, I still thought I was bad. So that would be, it would, people are a mirror. So someone showing up and being like, I just want to love you, to me at that time would have just too much. So it's not, I don't think anyone's good or bad or anything like that. And if people are feeling very anxious, they think they might be dating, an avoidant person, like for me, it was really essential to be able to just kind of regulate myself. And it still is. It's important for me to take time away. There's a beautiful book, I don't know if you've read it, called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it's fantastic. And actually I'd recommend that anyone that's maybe finds himself in this anxious avoidant dance, both sides reads it. So he talks about something called your upper limit, and it's brilliant. It goes across everything, sports, performance, everything. And basically we hit our upper limit when everything starts going really well. So I've met this guy, it's going really, really well, like he seems great. Then what happens is some of my childhood conditioning and messaging kicks in, which is, well, that sounds too good to be true. Or, but you're bad, so this isn't going to work out. Or, any of the other things, nothing good comes easily. There must be something wrong with him or with you.
When's that other shoe going to drop?
Right, there we go. So then I'm upper limiting. So then here are the voices in my own conditioning system, old stuff, old patterns, you name it, going off. So what I might start doing is self-sabotaging. As an avoidant, my self-sabotage is vamonos. As an anxious person, my self-sabotage might be, oh God, let me control. And Gay Hendricks says in the book, and it's amazing, and he says in the book that the thing that makes us the most activated, the thing that activates the upper limit the most, because jobs can do it. You think you've been promoted above your, people are going to find out you're not really that good, or, I think you did lie about that qualification.
Yeah, you're a fraud.
You didn't get B in cookery after all, like 15 years ago, they'll find out and you'll be running through the streets like Game of Thrones, people sing shame. Like that's the kind of stuff that goes to your head, right? So, but he says that the number one thing that is going to kick off the upper limit is romantic relationship with another person, because you physically get high from another person. Like it's going to start triggering your whole system, especially in a new relationship. And so he talks about the importance of ensuring you have autonomy. It doesn't need to be like my old self, which is like I'm off for a week and then I'll be back. I think it's also because I've got heavy Sagittarius placements, but there we go. So it's like it's more about just taking some time out in between, settling your system, your nervous system, getting back into that, processing maybe the conversation, the information, and then again, getting back in touch with your needs. And so looking at it from there. But it's a really fantastic book, and it talks about how we self-sabotage. And I think leaning into your work, which is exceptional, by the way, I watch yours all the time. I love it. And I think looking at how the self-sabotage, when we upper limit, there's someone I really like, it's going really well. Weirdly, one of our first reactions is, what's going to go wrong? And then you try and stop it, and you're going to try and stop it in different ways and different styles.
if you're dating now, right? How are you communicating with someone else your boundaries? What do boundaries look like? And we recently had this thing on social media. It was trending with Jonah Hill, and everybody went down that rabbit hole. And I think we kind of confuse what boundaries actually look like versus trying to manage somebody else's behavior,
Yes.
and who they are and what they do, and just kind of how they present themselves and their own level of authenticity. And clearly, like, that particular situation from the outside looking in is fairly toxic.
Yeah. So boundary, a way that I like to sort of discuss or look at boundaries is a way to keep people in your life, not necessarily to keep them out. So obviously, if there's someone deeply toxic and we don't want them around, like hard stop boundary, fine. However, if there's someone that maybe, perhaps you're starting to build a romantic relationship or a friendship or whatever it might be, or something's in flux, or maybe you've just got stuff going on, like I've got a load of work on right now, I can't be as sociable as normal, or I can't be as supportive to a friendship, let's say, at the moment, where I usually am. And maybe a friend's going through some stuff and maybe I'm normally available and I just can't right now, like life, single mummyhood, whatever. And so I might need to put a boundary in. But I think what's been missing in the conversation about boundaries is people are like, oh, it's a boundary of mine. And that can be a bit ick and a bit unskillful and not necessarily in service of the relationship. So like I say, if there's something toxic, fine. Like, obviously have a boundary. But if it's someone that you care about and you can communicate, listen, I love you so much. Did it with one of my friends the other day. Said, I'm really sorry. I feel like I haven't been there in the way that I would like to normally, but I've got this, and this at the moment. We've got some time put aside in August. We're traveling together. Me and this wonderful girlfriend of mine, I'm going to visit her. Like, I really cannot wait for some proper quality time with you. I'm clearing everything when we're there. It's just going to be fully focused time. I am around, but I'm very aware I haven't been as available because of these reasons, which she's fully aware of. I love you so much. And she's like, darling, don't worry about it. Like, and I get that. Don't you worry. I'm so looking forward to the time we've got together. So that has been a bit of a boundary, if you like, in our friendship, because I just simply haven't got capacity at the moment to be in the role that I normally would. And she's been exceptional and exquisite about it. And we're both really looking forward to that deep connect that we're going to have over too many glasses of champagne on the terrace. It's going to be fantastic. So that's an example. And there's a saying that I like. So if we go into dating for your audience about how to use a boundary, particularly if you're being very triggered, if we think about that work I just mentioned about, and we're getting flooded because nothing triggers us more, than another person in a romantic relationship. There was something that I saw recently, and I think I put it on Instagram, which is, if you keep your boundaries quite firm, you can keep your heart really soft. And that's important to me. I'm a very sensitive person. Like, I'm very caring, I'm very nurturing. I like to care for people, in relationship, my friendships, romantic partners, whatever. That is something that I really enjoy doing. But equally, I won't self-abandon, and I won't self-abandon or self-betray. So if there's things that are important in my life, if someone asks me, can you do this or can you attend that? And I'm really sorry, I can't. I've got this certain thing happening, which is an example. Like, I need to stay in my center as well. So yeah, by having a strong boundary, doesn't mean we have to keep everybody out, but just having a strong boundary about what it is that, we know nurtures us and keeps me as my best self, means that I can keep my heart really, really soft. And irrespective of how somebody else might behave, if we talk about romantic relationship, I know that I'm going to be okay.
And that's a really big misconception about the avoidant is, well, they're just unloving and they're a narcissist. And the reality is they do care. They do love you. They do want to be with you. They actually care very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can learn to understand what I call their intimacy threshold, right? I can only take so much. It's a thermometer. It goes up to a certain point and then it just bursts, right? And then I got to go. And so that's when you understand that intimacy threshold of your partner, then you can start to have a conversation around that, or a safe word, right? Where it's like monkey balls, right? You just yell it and it's like, okay, I know you need to go relax for a little bit, whether that's an hour or 2 hours or, a day, if you're not living together and stuff like that. But you have that boundary of, okay, I'm going to say that's our safe word. I need to go find myself again because I'm starting to feel a little bit lost. I'm starting to have that internal activation, that visceral reaction to whatever's happening in this moment. But as the anxious attacher, it just, like, it triggers them so badly, even if you do tell them I'm coming back, because it just triggers their abandonment wound and that fear of rejection.
And that's where, again, I think exactly to your point, you design in. So like, what do I need? I need just like this afternoon off, just going to go and do some exercise or something that makes me feel like me again. And then, and also taking ownership. And this is my stuff. So, but I will check in with you tonight and I'll check in with you tomorrow morning. So I think there's like, it's okay again to ask for those things to be met. It's okay to design that in. And no relationship will ever be without any kind of conflict. We're two completely different people. There's going to be things that just are not, we're not the same, and we don't think in the same ways. And that's the other thing I would say, maybe being anxious as well, is that perhaps don't feel as able to voice your needs because you don't want to rock the boat or, send the avoidant off somewhere else even more. But actually, it's almost reassuring because it's like, okay, well, this is the container and this is the space to move within. So yeah, I mean, just knowing what your needs are in relationship, and then being really okay with that and just letting that shine out and letting someone meet you where you are is just the most incredible gift.
How can we navigate conflict in relationships?
There's a cool tool that I learned in systems coaching. So systems is anything bigger than one. So couples, maybe co-founders in a business. So just think about groups and teams and things, up to thousands of people in huge rooms that we've done before. And so there's a great tool called the 2% truth. And this is a life hack for conflict in relationship. And actually it'd be quite a good life hack for, I think, this sort of anxious avoidant, even just like checking in with yourself. Okay. So if you and I were dating and you went, Annalie, you are selfish, I would be like, I'd be so triggered. Like, I'd be like, I'm not selfish. But if because you're
just avoidant.
Off, like British Airways, like, yeah. I'd be like, get the jet, like, yeah. I'd be. But if you said to me, you are selfish, I'd be triggered, and I'd be like, because you're telling me I'm the sum of one thing. Now, I'm not. My entire entity, Annalie, is not selfish. However, if you said to me, Annalie, can you own being 2% selfish sometimes in this relationship? I'd say, babe, I can raise you. At times I can be about 30% selfish in our dynamic. And also I can explain where maybe that serves the relationship or myself. And then that's when you can have a conversation about it, right? Yeah. So, if you are having want to have again maybe like a needs conversation, the 2% truth is so safe, because it's like, how much can you own? Let's say there's an issue, I'd like not wanting to go and see someone's parents or something. I really feel like we always go to your parents and we never go to my friends. Okay, like it's quite a common one, right? I really feel like we're spending much more time with you. If I said we always go to your friends, we're always at your friends, you'd be like, no, we're not, because 3 weeks ago we went to, or whatever. Right. If I said to you, can you own that lately, like, can you own 2% of the time of our socializing is generally more oriented towards you and your friends and your hobbies, you'd be able to say, well, I can own that it's about 50 or 60%. Actually, I really get that. So what it's doing is it's depersonalizing the complaint or the issue from the individual, because you telling me I am selfish, firstly, you're not going to get very far. I'm going to be hugely flooded and triggered. And secondly, that just simply isn't who I'm not 100% of that, because there's so many other things going on. But I can definitely own being selfish in the relationship. And I can definitely own, a percentage of that. And some of that will be positive, because part of that selfishness might be like, well, yeah, I needed to go to the gym because that makes me feel much better and it's really important for my mental health. So I did prioritize that.
You'll love me a lot more if I go to the gym today.
Yeah, well, I prioritized that, but you're right. You are right. And actually, I could probably dial that back a bit because I can see that you're struggling. And another thing that Brene Brown and her husband do, which is brilliant, is they do a check-in in the mornings. They do this check-in where they ask where they're at that day as like a percentage. So if you think about it like a battery on your phone, and they both check in, they're like, oh, I'm about 70% today. I had a great night's sleep. I'm feeling brilliant. And you might say, oh my God, I slept terribly. My shoulder was hurting me again. And I'm, going through all this stuff, and I'm 20%. I'll be like, oh gosh, well, look, let me sort it out. I'll do dinner. I'll sort this. I'll sort this. And then another day it might be the way around. That's great. But she says, if they're both really low, let's say that, because that happens. So both of you are under stress. Both of you are tired. Both of you are hi, new parents. Like both of you are going through both of you are going through lots of stuff. Then you might both be really low. In which case they strip the engine. So that's when it's like, right, we don't need to go to that event. Let's get a takeaway for dinner. Let's, can someone bring that child back from school for, what can we possibly do to try and make sure that we, bring ourselves back up again so that we don't continually live in this place. And that's really amazing as well. And that helps avoid conflict. And more importantly, it helps avoid resentment, which is, I've been doing blah, 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 blah. And then someone else goes, well, I've done this, and this. So yeah.
Well, and so that's a thing in the anxious and avoidant trap is the anxious attacher generally finds themselves in this deep place of resentment because they're keeping track of every little thing. They're keeping score on everything. I'm pouring into the avoidant. I'm doing all of this stuff for you. I'm showing up in every way I know possible. What they don't realize that they're doing is the anxious attacher is actually in a state of avoidance. And so they're avoiding being abandoned. They're avoiding that fear of rejection. And they just don't recognize it in the moment. And that's what kind of perpetuates the cycle between those two people. And then the avoidant is often very anxious as well because they've hit that intimacy threshold and now they're in this place of fight or flight. I gotta go. I can't deal with this right now. I'm out. Peace. And they blame the anxious attacher for that. Like, it's all your fault. You did this.
And I think what's heartbreaking about that is that neither person is being themselves.
Right.
Because, and if we go back to the inner critic and the wearing of a mask, the anxious attacher is more likely to be trying to be perfect and sort of performing and keeping and trying to work everything out and second guess and be 3 steps ahead and looked over every avenue to try and keep themselves safe. Because both people are doing this, right? It's about safety, which I know and you speak about it so beautifully. The avoidant person, also, it's stunning. I love your channels. And then the avoidant person is doing the same thing. They're feeling unsafe. They're feeling either overwhelmed or flooded or, again, there's abandonment stuff going on there as well. There's a lot of insecurity, but it feels easier to step away because you think the pain won't be as bad if I put some distance in. So both people are not fully showing up because neither person feels fully safe. Both people are wearing a mask. They're both doing it for really good reasons. They both feel the underlying tension and resentment. And then maybe it doesn't work. Rather than both people, I've been going on about it a bit, but rather than both people just, leaning into this idea of just being able to share and being confident enough in who you are and what your needs are. And if that isn't with that person, then that's okay. Like, I'd rather find the person that it is a match for and that can, hold this energy for me and that I can really show up in. And there is also a really big responsibility, and all the people working with you to understand that about yourself. And I think it's really critical to take responsibility. And this was where that boundary stuff gets thrown around. It's very easy to say that and not take responsibility for yourself. And it can be quite unskillful. Oh, it's boundary. Well, what are you doing? This keeps being a bit of a theme here. So are you learning from it? Are you implementing something? Are you changing something? Or are you just sort of chucking boundaries around because it's a bit of a trendy thing to say? And again, you're avoiding doing the work.
Yeah, it's definitely just because it's trendy.
Yeah, 100%.
And I can make a TikTok video on it and get a bunch of views, but I'm not actually going to work on anything. That's not going to happen.
It's remarkable. Yeah, it's well, it's not in the end. Yeah, it can show up a lot, but that's what I sort of see is that the inner critic encourages us to wear a mask because remember, it's trying to make sure we don't fail. It's trying to make sure we're not disconnected. It's trying to make sure we stay safe. It's got good intention. It just does it in a crappy way. Yeah. And then we take that into relationship and we take in this, we're upper limiting, we're self-sabotaging, I'm sure you look at Dr. Harville Hendrix's work and, you've got the emotional person and the thinker and we're attracted like magnets and then we repel each other from, again, childhood messaging about how that's not safe to be together. And it's when you unpick all of this, you start to understand it. You can almost start to, it's like the art of non-attachment, you can start to watch your emotions and your triggers kind of sort of outside of yourself and be like, I am safe. So whatever's going on, whatever this person may do, I trust myself to, even if I develop deep feelings and this may not work out, I'm still maintaining my life. I'm not self-abandoning. I'm practicing the things that are important to me while still giving and trusting in this relationship and really respecting and honoring this person. But I can relax because fundamentally I know that I will be okay irrespective of what happens.
I love that. And that needs to be like a mantra in the back of everyone's mind is that I'm going to be okay. No matter what happens. The 2% truth and being able to take ownership of your role, your part in that relationship. Have you seen couples therapy on Showtime?
Oh, I haven't, no.
So I got the free trial, and this isn't a plug for anything, but you get the free trial, you binge watch it, you go through it, and Orna is the therapist, and she's absolutely amazing. But she goes through and she's able to, navigate couples from the perspective of the other person, and she goes back and forth with
Mm.
each person in the relationship, so they can try and see what the other person is experiencing. Like, can you see this? And so the 2% truth reminds me of that, right? Can you take ownership? And it's big because you're actually de-escalating the argument and you're diffusing it in that moment by using that technique. So I love that very much. And then you touched on the avoidant, and it really is energy based. We're so rooted in our energy, and what happens is we're not able to make space for the anxious person in that moment. I can't hold your energy right now because it's too much for me. I can't handle what you're going through and what I'm going through in this moment. And that's usually when the avoidant, like you said, they grab their passport and they're out the door.
I mean, I think you know all of this, but most people do not believe that they are worthy of love exactly how they are. Like me right now today in like gym kit at home, do I think that I am exactly like flood me with unconditional love? Like I don't need to do anything for it. Most women feel in particular, especially around maybe like sex and pleasure as well, that they need to have earned something. So like my house must be perfect, I must be perfect, I must look perfect, I must say all the right things, I must maybe earn something first. Like, and I know men feel the same. I have loads of male clients, and they get very overwhelmed at the thought of just being loved for exactly who they are in this moment, not when I lose 10 pounds, when I get that promotion, when I get this bigger house, when none of those things, just like literally as you are right now is yourself. And so what happens is we then go into this like, that can be people pleasing based, that can be like getting a bit more triggered into maybe more natural feeling attachment styles as well, because just having that safety and sort of anchoring in yourself that you really are just as I am right now, not I'll be happy when, right now, I am so deserving of, incredible love and incredible relationship. And that takes a lot of work to get there, and it can be ever evolving, and also ask me on a different day. There are days you're like, but that is, I think, a huge trigger for people, is that fundamentally you don't feel worthy yourself. And so then you're not feeling worthy. If we go back to my I am bad, I'm ashamed, need to start hiding this stuff, need to start armoring up, need to start however that looks, being perfect or whatever it might be, or overly successful, or anything I might need to do. People exit relationships all the time. That's Dr. Harville Hendrix as well. Because you're again so triggered by the intimacy because you don't feel worthy, that I'm going to exit. And exit could be cheating, but exits are work. I'm going to work all the time. I'm going to, because that makes me validated, and that's a good thing that I'm doing. But actually, I'm still avoiding intimacy. Being on my phone of an evening, I've got to do this. I've got to get back to so and so. I've got to book this thing. I've got to sort that out for the kids. Like, I'm avoiding intimacy. Intimacy is into me see. Like we say that a lot in the coaching community. But
Yeah.
I'm avoiding allowing you really looking into me because I probably don't feel worthy. I mean, you would have, I imagine, had to do this. There's borderline nothing more horrendous in the world than eye gazing exercises in coach training school. Have you had to do it?
It's important to do it though if you want to
Yes.
cultivate intimacy with your partner, and it's
Oh,
such an easy drill, but it's so freaking uncomfortable. And it's why,
yes.
like, I always tell people, you got to build up to it. Like, if you start with the 5-second hug, 10-second hug, 15-second hug, 30-second hug, and then move into things like eye gazing or doing breath work together side by side in the same room,
It's
at least
incredible.
you're sharing space in that moment.
But isn't it remarkable that I think most people would rather do an Ironman than look in their partner's eyes for 2 minutes? Honestly, I'm not being facetious. And it's so, when you go through various coach training schools, at every training all the time, you have to do eye gazing with strangers. And so like I've become a bit more desensitized to it. But it's amazing what can happen and it's so intimate, but we will do anything to like avoid that kind of intimacy. And I said, like, could be someone that you've like laid in bed next to for 10 years, and the thought of doing that with that person is just overwhelming. So we do a lot of the time we're choosing these exits to avoid intimacy. And I think it's to do with our own self-worth.
I mean, what happens is just boom, tears. It brings up this
Oh, yeah.
visceral reaction from so deep down that you can just feel it in your stomach. And you're like, no, I am not doing this, because now I have to feel feelings. I'm not going to feel feelings.
Yeah.
I don't need that.
And things that maybe I've been trying to hold together about myself, things that I've been maybe, some good old shame that I've been trying to keep hidden in my system, that act of just being so intimate and looking into each other's eyes, I feel so exposed, I feel like that is just such an intimate way for me to be exposing myself as well. I can't hide in my busyness or something else I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah. Or my stoicism or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on like friend breakups briefly. What does that look like? How do we navigate a friend breakup? It's so common and it pops up all the time in my comment section. So I thought I'd ask you that question.
Do you know, I get the most questions about that as well. So it's like
Wow.
unbelievably common. And I work with this amazing team who do my videography and help me. And they're both like one's
Yeah,
25.
your videos are amazing, by the way. You've got a great team. And it's
I
like,
really have.
I'm like, I can't wait until the day I have a team because it'll be
Honestly,
amazing.
all local. I've known them for years. But my videographer's 22. He's incredible. And my
Awesome.
person does all my post and design is 25. So, I'm 42, but I would talk to them about it. We talk when we're filming and I'm like, have you guys experienced this or what's going on for you? And so in that age group in particular, the thing that seems to be showing up the most is when, and it's really hard, is when, say, you've been through like quite a dark time or something really difficult, and then you get some success or just something joyful, like I've got a new job or I'm dating someone I really care about. And you can see someone like one of your friends that you always thought was going to be there for you and they don't even raise a smile, or there's some like comment or and it's quite shocking because you think, well, hang on, what? At first it was like, what? I thought we were in a friendship group, or I thought that we were tight, or we're a good group. And what's happening most of the time is that person is in some kind of pain themselves, and we are mirrors. So when something is happening to you, you're shining a light often into the things going on, that maybe people aren't feeling so great about. I was told this when I was going through my divorce. It was a really powerful and valid piece of advice, which was the people that you thought would always be there won't, but don't worry, because there'll be people that you never thought that would step in that do. And that was exactly what happened. There were people that I thought I could 100% count on that would, still be inviting me to things or checking in or whatever, and it was really difficult at the time and quite heartbreaking. But thank goodness this person had told me this, because I felt, to be prepared is to be well armed. And so I was kind of like, right. And then exactly as they said, what happened was there were people that, the kindness of strangers, there were people that I never expected to step in and offer me and my daughter just love and support. And that was also right for exactly where I was in my life at that time. So I would invite anyone watching and listening this to think about that, is that, I'm quite spiritual as well. So I try not to, Buddha says we should neither cling nor resist. And I'm trying as I get older to get better, with that, with just allowing. And if somebody doesn't, or they cannot be with me in that moment, that's okay. And so maybe that means a boundary, maybe it's a period of time thing. Like I said, maybe it's that I just need some time out because I've got to deal with this and I'll be back. Maybe it's that we're full circling. More often than not, what I find out later down the line is that someone's going through some stuff and they maybe felt they couldn't share, or there was something that they were dealing with in that moment. But we are mirrors. So if someone is finding that a friend can't cheer for you, obviously we don't want that, but it could be that they're not feeling particularly great about something in their own existence at the moment. And also they can be, we are inherently fairly selfish creatures, and we do think about what might happen to us first. So, you might start dating someone and they're worried about losing you. Although they're happy for you, you'd be really happy for a friend. You can be so happy, but maybe that was like, but we were like doing everything together. Like you became my person in our like breakup, and I could always rely on you when everyone else is married and stuff like that. And we always did everything together. And then someone meets somebody, and you're like, oh, I am happy for you.
Now I don't have anybody.
Yeah, so it can be. It's not necessarily bad, but it might not be. There can be a lot going on. But just to reassure people, if people are stepping out of your life, let them. And just be assured that the right people will step in. They always do.
And just remember, your new life is going to cost you your old one,
It's
because you're going to grow, you're going to change, you're going to become different, you're going to expand your consciousness, you're going to raise your vibration. And as you do those things, the blinders come off and new opportunities start to enter into your existence. and they become available to you.
Exactly. Yeah, you miss it otherwise.
Yeah. And I love that you keep mentioning age 3 times now that I've counted. So happy birthday, because you just had a birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And if you guys don't follow Annalie's YouTube channel, make sure that you go and do that, because she just started it up. She's going to produce a ton of valuable content, as she has today with us. I like that you mentioned that your videographers, not only are they local, but they're younger. And I just had a podcast with Stone Fredrickson, and he's all over TikTok. He's Coach Stone. Not sure if you've seen him, but he does all the TikTok growth and mindset. He's 19 years old, but he created just, an amazing platform for himself. He created an amazing business for himself, and he continues to grow. And he has such a wonderful mindset and this booming voice that, is obviously meant for video and radio. But to recognize that, in order to grow, in order to gain new skill sets, in order to become different and to grow your channel and to grow all the things that you're creating, going to the people that know how to do this stuff, even though they're 22 and they're younger, right? We often think of things when we're in our 40s of, well, those young guys, those young people, they just, whatever. And I know best, and I'm going to keep moving down this path. And it's like, but do you? Right. So it's really important to embrace like the younger people that are in our environment and try to lift them up along with us, as they're going to show us skills that we never thought would even exist. And I've learned so much from people that, are a decade, 2 decades younger than me. And so to be able to allow yourself to do that, I think is so important
I love
to grow in any area.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's really interesting, because when I had that chat with them about the friendships and stuff, it is universal. I think it happens in every decade of your life or every chapter in your life. So the subject area of what their friends were not cheering for them about might be a bit different to, say, me, but it's something that is happening and affecting everybody. So it's really good that I get to have those conversations with them as well. They're amazing.
Annalie, how can people reach out to you and tell them a little bit about your Inner Critic Masterclass?
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I have a masterclass. Like I say, my approach on the inner critic is that it's a well-meaning friend gone wrong. And I've got this beautiful masterclass that's on my website, which is annaliehowling.com. And you actually go in, it's like a visualization, and you go through it. I explain everything we've done today in more detail, but you get to meet your own inner critic. You will meet that voice in your head. You go into conversation with it. You get to find out why it's behaving how it is, and more importantly, how to collaborate with it and be cheerleaders for one another and move forward. And it's amazing, and the feedback is really incredible. And I do that with like celebrity clients right through to sports people and everybody. They all have the same thing with me. So for the first time, that's been distilled. In September, I'm going to be launching a year-long program for people as well, to do, again, self-study in their own pace, but then have a portal and have access to me and have your questions answered as well. I want to be able to work more with people. So
what's that year-long program going to look like?
It's really a way of like making it more accessible. I'm trying to remove the privilege. So I'm trying to find a way that we can do it into smaller modules, and people can kind of work through all of my work. We've got a beautiful self-reflection guide, which is exceptional, to be honest. It's like a real deep dive. Attachment styles is in there, actually. There's a bit on attachment styles.
It's important.
Completely, just to understand your relationship to pleasure. Do you know your needs? All of it's in there. So that's, you can buy that individually now. That's on there, the self-reflection guide. And then all of these things are going to go into a program, which is just like a year-long self-study. You can do it in a day if you want, or spread it out. And then I said there's going to be a portal where people can connect. So it can be community where you can meet like-minded people. Because that's the other thing we found, is that when you're maybe in a transition yourself, even your best friends who love you dearly, they just might not be there at the same time as you. And so you finding community, like through the work you're doing, your platforms, and on this portal where people can have safe conversation and go, this is where I'm at. I've had people like swapping numbers and, making friends. It's really nice. So that's important to me, is creating community. Instagram is my biggest platform, which is at Annalie Howling. I am on TikTok. I need some housekeeping. It's not like yours. That's at Annalie Howling. And then, YouTube launched last week. Thank you for that, which is also Annalie Howling. And there'll be a lot on there. And there's a lot more about the fawning in great detail, relationship. There's something about the attachment in our physiology and why we might go back to the toxic ex, all of it.
That's amazing. You're absolutely brilliant. Did you mention, so you have the guide, do you also have a book?
No, that's something that might be in the works at the moment, in the background. So
I think you should definitely write one. People have been asking me to do the same thing, and I'm like, I already have the table of contents. I'm ready to go on this, but I need a ghostwriter. I've got a lot of memos and a lot of dictations and voice memos, so we'll see how that goes.
I think it would be a gift if you did.